South Carolina NORML Cannabis conversation for this week. Welcome,
Woohoo!
everybody. My name is Scott Weldon, and VP is here going to kind of guide us through it tonight. I will hopefully be sitting in the background a little bit more. But to kick things off, as we normally do, I do just want to kind of do our little disclaimer that all of our meetings and podcasts are an environment of education and awareness and are not an open market for the sale, distribution, or purchase of cannabis, and we do not encourage or condone illegal behavior of any kind.
That's right.
All righty, so let's get to it tonight. Let's have a conversation.
Yeah, let's have a conversation. Thanks, Scott. Good to see you today. Good to see you. I can see that
Good seeing you too, as well.
you're looking spry today. So you must have got some good rest.
Oh, oh, schmoozing will get you everywhere.
Oh my God. Yeah, Scott, it's good to see you. And real quick, I thought this would be pretty interesting as we're kind of diving in to today. I did want to say that I was in Michigan this past weekend, and I didn't get to visit a lot of dispensaries or anything of that nature like I wanted to. It was a family visit, so there was a lot of like visit your aunties, uncles, grandma, all that other kind of stuff. But I did want to point out that as soon as you cross the border into Michigan, every billboard was about cannabis. Every billboard was advertising that there's a dispensary. Every single billboard. It was kind of amazing and kind of like, wow, okay, I guess they, you know, they're ready for you to get cannabis in there. And I thought that was interesting, and I wanted to share that tidbit because it just kind of showed how the marketing of cannabis, like that's not what today's show is about. It'll be a different time, but it was just interesting how the marketing was like, hey, you just got into the state, you just crossed the border, great.
Well,
Check
and
out what we got.
there's a segment called cannabis tourism.
Yeah,
People are traveling to legal states just for the cannabis,
yeah.
and so the state's tourism departments or whatever you would call them are going picking up on it saying, let's take advantage of it. To me, it's kind of like the Girl Scouts selling cookies outside of the dispensary. You know, I might not be able to agree with it or participate in it, but I'm going to take advantage of it.
Exactly. Exactly. I thought that that was super wild. Like it was interesting. And I did want to speak a little bit to just the overall like the vibe of it. Like just even like everyday citizens that may have talked about it, or family members that I had that were up there that just were like, it wasn't a big deal. It was just, yeah, this is a, we come out here and we have our smoke sessions, and it's a good time, but there wasn't it clearly had like this air of normalcy. But a lot of my I was in Muskegon, Michigan, so there's a lot of open spaces out there. So there's plenty of, doesn't seem like there maybe a whole lot to do. But they do get their smoke sessions in, and I thought that was pretty cool to be in the space and place of that, and just see how just it was embedded in what they were doing. And so I thought that was pretty cool.
Right, becoming normalized in their lifestyles and such. So,
Exactly. Exactly.
and
So
not having that fear and looking over your shoulder all the time.
yeah, yeah, that was also like just that layer of relief was awesome. That was something that I could just tell that people were glad that they had that element where they didn't have to worry about all the I don't know, like you said, just the kind of the paranoia, the kind of looking over your shoulder, like hoping that everything's going to be okay, and it was just fine. So I thought that was a really awesome element to that trip. So next time I have to go up there and see kind of what that scene is about. Like if you haven't been to any states where cannabis is legalized, I invite you to do that, because it's pretty interesting seeing, especially kind of just the dispensaries, and just kind of how they are embedded into the economy, or like what those shops actually look like. There's a wide range of how that can go, but it was pretty interesting.
That was some of the conversation I had with a fella that when we were down on Folly Beach the other week. Apparently, he's traveled to a number of different states and been into a number of different dispensaries, and says this state knows what they're doing. This state doesn't seem to do it right. That kind of stuff. There's certain states he liked the products and the offerings and such, and the way the state was handling their retail side of it. And then others that he just didn't think were doing justice, getting dumbed down cannabis and things like that. Kind of like what South
Yeah.
Carolina's been trying to do with the medical, is dumb it down.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that we'll explore that in some other episodes of Cannabis Conversation, some other live streams, because we are, though we are not legal, we are in a really great position to learn from other states, see what works, what doesn't work, and see what works best for the people of South Carolina. So there's a lot of advantage in that kind of space. And I think that it's there is room for us to grow. I'm gonna pop up something. uh Joey Riano, I hope I said your name right. My God. He said, hello all, South Carolina sucks in so many ways. So what I'm gonna comment about this is what I'm gonna comment about this is just kind of piggybacking on what I just said about, there are a lot of not so fun things that go on in South Carolina. I can absolutely agree to that. But I do think we're in a good position to learn from other states. So hopefully, fingers crossed, Joey, that we will be listening and looking and watching and absorbing what's going on in other states so that we can do it here. And shout out to Josh Griffin, as always. Josh Griffin checking in. Thank you so much for checking in, and thank you for all the work that you're doing and all the help with SC NORML. Josh is in the Columbia area, y'all. So if you are in the Columbia area or surrounding areas, please make sure that you get in touch, because Josh could be a great point of contact for there. What you got, Scott?
I just wanted to share this graphic. I saw this the other day. It's actually an older report, but
Yeah.
this talks about the 2019 report, actually illicit markets 2020. This is a 2020 report. Largest estimated illicit cannabis markets in the United States. And if you look, number 8, number 7 are tied. Alabama and South Carolina at 1.1 billion with a B, billion
Wow.
dollar a year cannabis industry.
Wow.
Um, a little ways behind Texas at 4.3, North Carolina at 2.2, and so on down the line, but still substantial. And as other states legalize, it seems to just bump us up on the list a little further. But imagine if that, now mind you, that is a black market number. That is not
Right.
going to legitimate retailers. They're not paying taxes on that. $1.1 billion of revenue that basically, by keeping marijuana illegal, cannabis illegal in the state, the the state government is supporting the black market to that extent.
That's
So
that's that is. I'm glad that you put that number up on the board, because I mean, it's right, it's right there. Like, look at that price tag right there. Like, look at those numbers and look at what we could be finding ways to benefit from that, for the people at large to be benefiting from that. Not just from like the herb itself, but also just from the economics that it brings. Like, that money could be injected into our communities. It could be injected into our our community at large, in terms of just money. Like, just, I mean, there could be a lot of resources that we could establish from that. So that's something to think about. And I also am going to go ahead, since you pulled up something, I'm going to go right into some of this top cannabis news. As I'm saying, top SC cannabis news. So I'm going to go ahead and add my little element as well, because I think it's important. I was telling Scott this before we jumped on here, was that I think that it's really important for us to know what's being talked about in South Carolina when it comes to cannabis, and just realizing that marijuana is being talked about, cannabis is being talked about. I think sometimes it's just not on our radar because of the type of state that we're in. Like, sometimes if it's not about it being like a law or being talked about by politicians, then we don't seem to kind of gravitate to the story. So I just wanted to kind of bring some headlines up. So the first part of this cannabis conversations will be just about these articles and touching on these. So something that came up, South Carolina Public Radio put out an article, hemp derived Delta 8 skirts marijuana laws and raises health concerns. I love the Delta 8 conversation. I love the Delta 8 conversation because it's still something that people are trying to wrap their heads around. It's something that has a lot of nuance to it. You know, on one end, there's people who say, yo, this isn't natural. Like, this doesn't, this has too much, like the process by which you increase the amount of Delta 8 is not natural. And then there's other people who say that, hey, this is only being said because of other big cannabis companies, that other big cannabis companies do not want that competition with Delta 8. So I love hearing that conversation. I love kind of understanding a little bit more about it. In this particular article, it starts off with this conversation about, or a story about a woman who has a Delta 8 infused drink. And at first is enjoying the effects, and then afterwards she gets woozy and she ends up having like a kind of a adverse reaction to the Delta 8. And then it kind of goes into how the FDA and some marijuana industry experts, as you see right here, it says that they're a little bit concerned about it, and they're concerned about the way that Delta 8 is manufactured. So one interesting thing about Delta 8 is that it is a cannabinoid, right? Like it's a cannabinoid. It's a cannabinoid that appears in the cannabis plant, just not at a very large amount of that, especially the hemp derived Delta 8. So it is, in short, it is a process, and we can get into this on another conversation, but it is a process that um, essentially transforms CBD into Delta 8. And that process, and I believe there's a little bit of isomerization for it, if I'm saying that word correctly.
You
Big
got it.
word. Shout out to my chemistry high school teacher who didn't believe in me. All right. So, but that would be something that, that kind of raises a red flag for a lot of people. So I run into people who say, oh, it's not natural, it's synthetic, it's this. But then there's another side to it that says the only reason that information is being said is because big businesses that have marijuana do not want competition. So you're thinking to yourself, well, what could be the competition? The competition is that if you're in a state where it is legal to have Delta 9, then that's what people are selling, Delta 9, which means that if you're in a place where it's not legal, you can't have Delta 9, right? Well, you can have hemp derived cannabinoids, you can have hemp, and that's where this Delta 8 also falls into. And because it's got some similar effects or feelings, like kind of that high feeling that people are familiar with, it's something that people can obtain. Like, even in I think later on in this article, it talks about how Google searches for Delta 8 soared in 2028, in 2021, because people wanted to know, is this a good alternative, especially when I'm in an illegal state. Scott, I think you had a couple of words.
No, I find that
Oh,
very
no.
interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I'm not that well versed on Delta 8. I've had that same question put to me about the synthesizing it. I was going to try and call it synthesization,
We're
but I just
wordsmiths
couldn't get
here.
it out. But
Yeah.
I'm still kind of that old school, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's new to me. It's more the unknown factor, that
A-
I have.
Absolutely. And I think that that's fair. I think that's fair. It's one of those things that I think it's always good to approach things with skepticism. I think it's always good, especially in when it comes to this market. And the reason why we're talking about this is there's an importance here, because one of my biggest points is that because of the lack of regulation in our market, and the lack of like federal movement, or like the FDA getting kind of a piece of this or anything of that nature, is that it's like a wild west out there, where people are making things, creating things, and you can't guarantee consistency all of the time. This is the reason why it's important for that federal push, because we need some boundaries in place. Like, I, for one, would love some boundaries in place. I, for one, would love for people who are creating these products to have to be held to a standard. Like, I think that that's fair. I think that's something that, in terms of telling people what they should be doing, I don't think that people should be, if you're selling these products or you're trying to get people to use these products, I don't think that you should be in a space of just telling them to do whatever. Like, I think that we should approach it with caution, just like I would approach Benadryl with caution, or any other kind of like FDA approved thing. I'm still going to approach that with caution. And I think that art form, if you will, is kind of lost amongst us. I think that there's a lot of push to be like, oh, it's this and it does this and it's going to be great. And it's like, we should be a little bit more responsible with how, people are ingesting these products.
Well, and you make a good point, because the message really should be for new consumers, new people wanting to try any of these products. The go slow, start low
Yeah.
process is really the
Yeah.
best way to go. Don't be trying to, do giant dabs your first time off or something like that,
Exactly.
and,
Exactly.
and expect to be able to function and things like that. But you
Exactly.
know, and that's one of the things too, where regulation, legalization brings regulation. Regulation brings the variety of us being able to have tested and regulated product, making sure that maybe there's not pesticides on it.
Right.
As law enforcement will always try and caution you about, it's not tainted with fentanyl,
Yeah.
whatever the case may
Yeah.
be. Um, and then you can choose the strain that's best for you,
Yeah.
especially in a state that's allowing good, commerce. I still favor these kind of small, sort of the microbrewer concept for brewing. Same thing for cannabis grows, that micro grower. Um, but good quality, high quality, well tested and certified product.
Yeah.
Um, and that way, because again, there are a lot of people that they like to consume, but they don't like that indica type of knock you back in the couch, I can't function sort of feeling.
Exactly.
They want an uplifting feeling, and uh, in an illicit market, you get what you get. You don't know what you're going to get.
That's right, Scott. I'm so glad you brought that up, because that is even more of a reason why it is important to vote. It is important to be in these conversations, because we need to say those kinds of things. We need to say those kinds of things and make them important and hold people accountable. Like, we need to make sure that people are utilizing products in a responsible way and utilizing them in ways that's going to help them in the long run. Like, just being responsible. And I really love that you mentioned about being selective, because that's another exciting thing about legalization is that when you get to open up the world of all these different strains and their combinations, that's why I always preach, like, read the certificate of analysis. Like, if you're buying, you can do that with hemp flower. Like, you can buy hemp flower and then read the certificate of analysis, see what the percentage is of the different cannabinoids, the terpenes, all of this stuff. Get selective on these industry folks out here, and say what you want. Like, that's a big part of this, and I think that's a element that's getting lost in the sauce. So, interesting conversation about Delta 8. I think that, I'll drop the URL in there in the chat for you all, so that if you want to read it kind of on your own time, you are welcome to do that. Let me just go ahead and put this in the little comment section. I think we got some people on the chat. So let's see. Let's see what Joey says. Joey says, look, this issue is a no-brainer. The fact that our elected officials continue voting against legalization in some form shows they have no brains. Joey is coming hard out here, okay? He's coming he's coming hard out here. And Josh says, if it was so bad, they'd be going after the dealer. UT, the profit and profile the users. Okay, so what I'm thinking is that Yeah, if it's going, no, exactly. If it's so bad, they'd be going after the dealer. Right, 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 right. And sorry for the typos. Josh said he's cooking. Josh, what are you cooking? That's the most important conversation right here. What
What's
are
he
you
cooking? Everybody wants
cooking,
to
man?
know. What's Josh
What
cooking?
are you cooking? Yeah, very. It's very interesting what we got going on. So let me go ahead and pop this URL in here and try to push it along and go on to this next article. Okay, so South Carolina cannabis fight persists in farmers lawsuit. All right. And I think Scott, you might have a little bit more details here too in this, but the short is there is a hemp farmer who has filed a federal lawsuit September 16th, so just a couple of weeks ago or so, alleges that South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, or SLED, Department of Agriculture, and the Attorney General's office all denied him due process after Department of Agriculture officials discovered unreported hemp crops during a check of his Dorchester County property on July 30th, 2019. This farmer has been trying to fight this fight for a while. As you can see, this was in 2019. And moving into that federal lawsuit, this is a big deal. I'm going to read this next paragraph too because I think it's important.
Okay.
According to the lawsuit, Pendarvis filed an amendment application and said that extensive droughts have forced him to move his crop's location. However, Derek Underwood, Assistant Commissioner of the Agriculture Department's Consumer Protection Division, insisted that the farmer's oversight was a willful violation of the state's hemp farming program, according to email shared in the complaint. He then began seeking approval to destroy the crop. And the legal mechanism for seeking such approval is unclear, which is where Pendarvis alleges the government's procedure violated his due process rights. Scott, what you think about that?
Well, it wasn't like he was growing illegally per se. He was a licensed hemp farmer here in the state. He
Yeah,
was, licensed by the agriculture department. Um, I'm not a farmer. I mean, I grew up in more rural areas, but I can't claim to be a farmer. I do know that weather and droughts play a big part in being able to grow your crop.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
it looks to me like if he did jumped through the proper hoop of setting the amended agreement in or the amended paperwork in, all should have been well, fine, and good, or at
yeah,
least some latitude, but not to just come in and immediately destroy the crop. Um,
yeah,
Personally, I hope that the taxpayers of South Carolina end up on the hook for this and having to pay him for the value of the crop that was lost.
yeah,
Uh, on the flip side of that, I hate it when the frickin' taxpayers of South Carolina are on the hook for this kind of shit and have to pay
yeah.
for um, crimes committed against citizens by enforcement agencies.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also don't like it when law enforcement agencies start to try to create laws instead of just, I don't like that. And I think that that's a big deal with this particular case too, is about how SLED obtained the the warrant, I believe. So, and just so you know, this farmer is as this article says, a fourth generation farmer, and he was the first person charged with a misdemeanor crime under the state's hemp farming program. So, one thing I'm going to say before I read this next paragraph about SLED is that my hangup here, especially with the hemp program, is that having heard different stories from people that are in this program and having even been somebody who has like perused a lot of kind of the criteria for applying for various things, I just don't understand why the repercussions must be so harsh when you don't really know what you're doing. I think that there has to be, I think that some form of leniency or something of that nature should be considered, like especially when there's just so much murkiness within the hemp program. And once again, teasing that could be something later on down the line we'll kind of talk about, is the South Carolina hemp program. So I think that it's a little egregious that this farmer has to go through these things when it's like it's a program that it's not like we've had years and years of this program. You know what I'm saying? It's not like it was something that you had established forever and a day. You don't. And a lot of the people within it don't even truly understand cannabis yet. Like the state in general doesn't understand cannabis yet. So I just think it's a little egregious that this person is going through this, and especially because of, why with a hemp program, why must SLED be so involved with this hemp program? Like, why must this be an element? Like, check this out. Okay, so top legal officials criticized the 2019 law's unclear enforcement mechanisms in emails detailed in the complaint. South Carolina Solicitor General Adam Cook said that the statute is ultra murky and gives no direction whatever to law enforcement. Without clarity, the state attorney general's office advised that the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division seek judicial authorization to ensure Pendarvis receives due process. But according to the complaint, officials didn't follow through. After failing to get a local judge to sign their seizure and destruction order, SLED agents, without detailing their intent to destroy the crop, obtained an arrest warrant for Pendarvis from another magistrate. Okay. Emails shared in the complaint show that agents took this action despite the original judge offering to hold a hearing in the matter, which SLED's general counsel, Adam Whitsitt, declined. Officials in the Attorney General's office then amended their guidance to agree with SLED's conclusion that the hemp farming participation agreement, which allows the destruction of crops growing in an unlicensed area, amounted to the valid consent necessary to pursue their plan. I'm going to drop this in there for you all to read because I'm not going to insult you. I know that you know how to read, but this is something to think about here, y'all. This is, to me, this is an example of how here is hemp, a legal product, a federally legal product. And yes, I know that there's different tiers and elements of that nature, of like there's different rules and regulations within the actual program. But to me, it seems a little unfair that corners get to be cut because this is hemp. Like it doesn't. I don't understand why there's just this kind of power lent to a law enforcement agency in this way. Like I hope
Well,
that. Go ahead.
and excuse me, I'm getting a little choked up about this. No, excuse me. The other side of it is law enforcement is not supposed to be the judge and the executioner. They're just supposed to bring the offender before the court system and not be the one sitting there going, well, oh, we're also going to be destroying this and repossessing that, and or should I say, asset forfeiting that. So they're really going way beyond what I believe the scope of what law enforcement should be.
Yeah. Here's a beautiful part of this. Yeah, I said I wasn't going to keep reading, but I'm telling y'all, it's it's wild. SLED agents destroyed the hemp crop that same day. Pendarvis alleges that 7 requests to call his lawyer were not granted by the agents, who told him the Department of Agriculture was, quote unquote, lined up with everything we're here for. Now, I'm just going to tell y'all right now. Okay, this is now a personal experience from Vaughn Postema. So this does not, like, this is personal experience. I have called the Department of Agriculture before for my own reasons, for information I wanted about the hemp program and even about cannabis in general in the state of South Carolina. And when I tell you, there's just a lot of jumping around. I got transferred to so many people in one day. I kept getting a hold on 1 second, I'll get somebody for you. Hold on 1 second, I'll get somebody for you. And the amount of just people not wanting to touch the subject of it, like, I think that that's not enough for it to say the Department of Agriculture is lined up with everything we're here for. Well, I've asked for a lawyer, and there's nothing within the hemp program that says that I can't ask for a lawyer, or that I can't kind of rebuttal these kind of things. So that's a good read for y'all. Okay, we're already at the halfway mark, and there's some other stuff I want to get into, but this is another reason why I want to show you that these are things happening in South Carolina when it comes to cannabis. So I've already shown you something. We've shown you something on the consumer side of things. We've shown you something on the farmer side of things, right? there's many facets to this cannabis industry, especially in South Carolina. Even if it's illegal in South Carolina in terms of marijuana, we're still actively doing things there. People are interested in cannabis. Okay. People want to know how they can enjoy elements of cannabis, different cannabinoids. The people are looking for that. Farmers are trying to maneuver their ways through different programs, trying to see if this is another realm for them for agriculture. And is that so far-fetched? You heard us last week, right? You heard us last week that South Carolinians since 1700s and such have been growing hemp. So this isn't so far-fetched for them to want to step into this and to dip their toe into this. So we've got to have more action. We've got to have more direction when it comes to the cannabis laws here in South Carolina, which kind of gets me into where we're going next, which is the race for governor in South Carolina. Scott, anything else before we go to that?
No, no, I think we've touched pretty well on the headlines of what's going on in South Carolina. And I do appreciate you reminding us that the conversation is still out there. Sometimes you just have to know, be able to dig them out because
That's right.
uh, I hate to say it, but news coverage doesn't cover cannabis the way I would like it to.
Yeah.
They tend to bury it a lot, or they tend to demonize it quite often.
Yeah.
Um, so finding good documentation on it is a challenge. So thank you for
Yeah,
bringing that to us.
you are so right about that. Um, okay, perfect. So next thing up that we have, hold on, let me get my life together behind the scenes. Okay, here we go. All right, so what I'm going to talk about is some very important stuff, as everything has already been important, but something that's very, very crucial for the state of South Carolina is that we've got some elections coming up. Okay. And I'm going to keep reminding y'all about this all throughout. But matter of fact, let me just go ahead and put this up here. Race for South Carolina governor. And by the way, the deadline to register to vote for the November 8th general election is October 9th, y'all. That is in what, like a week.
Yes, just over a
the
week away.
the ninth is a Sunday. Okay, so please, if you have not registered to vote, if you know some people who need to register to vote, make sure they vote. Okay, it is crucial, it is important. And because we're on this particular platform talking about this particular subject, if you are for the legalization, I need you to vote. I don't, I want to hear about it when I see you in the streets and you say, yeah, good job, VP. I like what you're doing. Cannabis conversations. That's normal. And I'm going to say, vote, my dog, because I need you to vote. We need some action. We need some push behind these things that we care about. All right. So first things first, race
Uh,
for South Carolina governor.
Dropping in the chat real quick for you
Of course.
all. It's the scvotes.gov's website where you
Yes.
can go and register to vote. You can register online and not even like send in any ID at that point. Just need to
Right.
show your ID then when you go to vote on November 8th.
That's right.
But so sorry to interrupt. I just want to make sure
Nope.
everybody had that link.
That's the perfect. That is the perfect interruption. So we've got the race for South Carolina governor, and we've got three right now. Okay, and I'm going to go through all three, and we're only going to focus on their marijuana platform or lack thereof. We are going to. I just want to kind of walk you through what they have on their websites, what they may have said in public already. We're right back here at Normal Smoke the Vote, vote.normal.org/politician. So this is, remember we were talking about that report card last week. You're going to keep seeing this over and over and over again because we got some good information on Normal's website. And I think that it's nice once again to see that grading scale. Okay. A, B, C, D, F, so here we go. First up is Joe Cunningham. All right. So we've talked about Joe a few times. We're not going to super deep dive into what Joe Cunningham has got going on, but as you can see, he's got an A here. He's a Democrat. Legalize, tax, and regulate, decriminalize, and medical use. So this is just giving you kind of that broad stroke of what it is that Joe Cunningham is going for. A couple of comments here. I think medical marijuana should be legal. As it relates to recreational marijuana, that should be left up to the states to decide. This is something Joe Cunningham has said. We're not going to raise taxes, but we are going to explore new sources of revenue. We're going to legalize marijuana, legalize sports betting, and we are going to take that revenue and pay our teachers more. So these are the things. And then simply, it's time to legalize marijuana in South Carolina. You can see some of the things that he's voted for. You can see that he voted for that MORE Act. Everything got quiet for a second. I think my headphones are just doing a super awesome job. Okay. Um, you can see Safe Banking Act. So you can see that what he's voted for, where he stands on these things. He's been very passionate about talking about the legalization of cannabis in general. Here's a little bit on his website. So this is what, once again, public information. This is at joeforsouthcarolina.com/freedom agenda. So legalize marijuana in sports betting. It's time that South Carolina joined our states across the country to legalize and decriminalize marijuana and legal sports betting. It goes in about veterans feeling the need to use marijuana to treat PTSD or even other ailments, that people should have the freedom to do that. He talks a little bit about that sports betting, but I think he's got one more thing on here. Legalization would also allow us to spur economic growth and raise revenue to pay our teachers more and fix our roads. The government shouldn't be able to tell South Carolinians which plants they can smoke or whether they can make money off their favorite teams or on a winning game. So that is Joe Cunningham. Joe Cunningham actually has he was at our lobby day, which, by the way, Scott, I don't know if you saw this, but I saw a news clip that actually covered our lobby day. But Joe Cunningham was there and he said some words. He had some things to say, and he's pretty passionate about Nick Masters' stance on marijuana. He's very passionate about. He doesn't like the lack of movement. He thinks that South Carolina is definitely behind the ball when it comes to bringing that legalization in. And as you can see, he's very passionate about where the money should go. I think that when it comes to, and once again, this is a different conversation for another day. There's so many things to talk about cannabis conversation, especially when we talk about where money should be going, who should be benefiting from the taxes and things of that nature of cannabis. But I think it's pretty interesting when a candidate says where they want the money to go or where they think it should go. I would love to see more kind of. I know that would be a continued conversation, but it would be nice to kind of dive deep and see a little bit of where that money really could go. Like having that stance, I'm for it. I also want to make sure that personally, I feel like communities that have been negatively affected by the illegal element of cannabis should benefit in some kind of way. And I think that we should do our research to figure that out, and we should look at other states to see how that can be done and accounted for. So I'm always curious about that. And I'm curious about, I know we talk about the legalization tax and all that kind of stuff, but then it's also kind of, and maybe I'm a little bit biased here because of the retail side of things and the selling side of things, but I'm also curious about what's that process like? Like once you legalize it, what does it look like to sell it? Like what does that look like? What are the stipulations around that? So I'm always curious about those details. I know that we're in that space of kind of running for things. So it's nice that we see these platforms, but I just want a little bit more information there. Scott, you got anything you want to add about Joe Cunningham? He's actually been on Cannabis Conversations before too. I think I'm frozen. Or Scott's not there. But Joe Cunningham has been here before on Cannabis Conversations, and we'll see if he wants to come through again. We're always here to. I really like interviewing politicians and seeing, what their process is or what their thought process is when it comes to all of this. So moving on to the next. I don't know if a lot of you know about Bruce Reeves, who's actually Dr. Bruce Reeves. He is a libertarian, running as a libertarian, but he's very big on not voting like straight ticket. He believes in making sure we vote for the right policy, like the people, like vote for the person, and making sure that you agree with their policies. So he's actually very big on not doing straight ticket, which I thought was pretty interesting for him to say. And I thought was pretty I don't know. I think it's something that people need to hear a lot. Like I personally also agree with the fact that you shouldn't do straight ticket, but that is just me. Bruce Reeves, Dr. Bruce Reeves, he doesn't have a lot of information right here on NORML's website, but he does have talks of decriminalization. Now, I will point out this: he does have a B, and that's because he hasn't really stated wanting to be completely like within legalization, but he does want to decriminalize, and he is for medical use. So I'm gonna take a little look at his decriminalization of cannabis. So he says it's time for South Carolina to join the 38 states that have legalized cannabis, shown by studies to be safer than alcohol, never linked to overdose, and proven effective as a medical treatment for common ailments such as glaucoma. Cannabis is a beneficial plant and the open door to a fast growth industry for our state. Okay, so one thing that I would love to see here is links to what is it called, like the like articles and stuff like that that says this is where I got this information from. I think that's really important when you're talking about cannabis and when you're advocating for cannabis, that if you're going to have something like this on your website for your platform, like saying even this, there's a chunk of stuff in this first paragraph, and it'd be great to have some like resources highlighted. So he says our approach to cannabis legalization builds on the 38 states providing access for medical use, the 19 states that have legalized recreational use, and necessary revision of law enforcement practices that criminalize citizens for personal choices. Okay, so we might need to update some of our stuff. Okay, in regards to medical use, we oppose any legislation that would prevent access to desired care. Cannabis for treatment of mental health, chronic pain, loss of appetite, and seizures, among other conditions, is a decision between a patient and their care provider. In recreate, it sounds like let me pop on over here. Oh, there's Scott. What's up, Scott?
Oh man, that's so frustrating when my computer locks up like that.
No
But
problem.
I'm
No problem.
back.
No problem. We're
I
still
am
rocking it.
back.
We're just talking
I
about
see
Dr.
you
Bruce
are.
Reeves.
We're
Yeah.
working on Bruce Reeves at the moment.
Yeah, that's right. So recreational use. So in recreational use, we oppose suppression of a free market, state hypocrisy, and regulated industries, and any legislation that ignores the free will of citizens. In criminal justice reform, we support decriminalization of marijuana and the expungement of criminal records for South Carolinians convicted of nonviolent drug-related crimes. Now, see, that's the one right there. The expungement is absolutely a thing that I care about too. And it looks like, Scott, we might have to according to this platform, at least according to this element, we might need to research a little bit more about this, because on NORML it just has decriminalization and medical use, but it looks like there's some other points within this platform here. So we'll have to take a kind of a closer look at that and see if we need to update. But that's Dr. Bruce Reeves. If you have not seen this man before, there's a little link right here, YouTube link. You're not going to be able to hear this here because I didn't adjust my settings properly beforehand. I'm sorry, but Dr. Reeves, Bruce Reeves, is right here and talking a little bit about his platform. This was back in August. He was on Fox 24 News now. So let me make sure that I pop this into our chat real quick. Give me 1 second. Boom, bam. Hold on. Comments. Here we go. And we got a little comment from Joey. Also, shout out to you, Joey, for coming through. Cunningham is a long shot, he says. I'm voting for him, but it'll take a miracle for him to win. Well, we'll see. We'll see. Most
Well,
people would agree with you, but we'll see.
and I've also got a little chime in on there. I've heard some people talking about write-in Mia McLeod. As many of you know, Mia McLeod
Right?
is a sitting senator. She has sponsored pro-cannabis legislation. She
Right.
has voted for the medical legislation. We know she's a supporter, although we have not gotten her to answer our candidate question here.
Yeah.
Even during the primaries, there were quite a few people that were rooting for her, over Joe Cunningham. mind you, I say this with apprehension, just because mentioning something like writing in Mia would split the votes with Joe
Right.
or someone else,
Right.
and splitting the votes might not be the best thing, because the end up might, you know, as Joey puts it, he's already got a slim chance. Joe's already got a slim chance. You split away into those votes, and that slim chance turns to a minuscule chance at best.
Yeah. Yeah.
And no matter where, what you feel about other policies and politics, when it comes down to cannabis law and cannabis reform, we do not want McMaster as our governor.
Oh, excellent segue there, Scott, because that's who we're bringing up next. Henry
Oh,
McMaster. That's how you segue, folks. So Henry McMaster, we talked about this before, has an F. Um, you're not gonna find, at least I could not find on his website, anything about marijuana. But his position, as it is written here, Governor McMaster has previously expressed his opposition toward the legalization of marijuana for adult use. He has also failed to voice support for proposed medical marijuana access legislation. He did not make any prominent statements in 2019 to indicate that he had changed these positions. Then there's a link there. So,
and
uh,
although I haven't seen a lot of it, I know some of his campaign advertising, sort
yeah,
of refers to Joe having a beer on the Senate
yeah,
floor, or
yeah,
the congressional floor, and also about his pro marijuana position, and then
right.
referring to Joe as a frat boy, or something
Yes,
along those lines. So
yes.
he does not say anything favorable about helping the people in need for medical cannabis, let alone the people that are being unjustly incarcerated for simple cannabis possession.
Right, right. And
Excuse me.
and one comment that really sticks out to me here is this one right here. When law enforcement is satisfied that it can be controlled, that is a different story. Once again, when law enforcement is satisfied that it can be controlled, that is a different story. And I just feel like that's a little bit of a cop out. Feel like that's a little bit of a cop out because, as we've talked about, it's not. We need to make the laws, right? We need to make the laws. It's a collaborative effort. We need to listen to the people and how the people feel and how they feel. There's a lot of people who are in favor of cannabis being
Uh,
legalized.
well, just as a comparative question, how well are they controlling alcohol abuse?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. What,
There you go.
what's law enforcement position on that? How many people are out on the
Opioids,
roads drunk and driving, on a regular basis?
right?
Um, and yet, cannabis is what they're worried about, and controlling that instead. The
Yeah,
opioid epidemic. I
yeah,
mean, one of the things that we know can help reduce the opioid epidemic is the legalization of cannabis. Um, but no, they don't feel it can be controlled. So let's just let them go wild with the opioids instead.
yeah, yeah. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. Matter of fact, this was not this year, but in 2021. It is the consistent opinion of law enforcement that it would be a detriment to society, my God, to law enforcement to open the door to that. McMaster said during an October 2018 debate, adding that legalizing marijuana for medical purposes would put the Palmetto State in a quote unquote very dangerous territory. That was in 2021.
Yes, yeah, he still talks in reefer madness terms.
Yeah, exactly. This is not like stepping into the now, like stepping into what's going on. Like this doesn't say that this is someone who has. This is someone talking about the consistent opinion of law enforcement instead of what are the what's the research that your team has conducted about other places. It seems like we're just relying a lot on what law enforcement is saying instead of perusing what is happening in other places, seeing what works, what fits. Like, just like Scott pulled up in the beginning of the huge price tag on kind of the black market itself. And it's like, well, what do what's the opinion of law enforcement there? What's the
Well,
opinion there?
and what's kind of interesting with some of that is when you listen to Chief Mark Keel, the chief of SLED, um, they often talk about these, sheriff from this town or a chief from that town. They'll give these stories with no documentation or no verification about, oh, how accidents have gone up or how, whatever their story might tend to be, the negative story.
Yeah.
And yet, like I say, they don't give any documentation, links, who these people are, reports, or referencing any actual studies. But a lot of it's just prop. I want to say it's propaganda. It is
Yeah, yeah,
propaganda.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. It has that feel of it. It certainly has that feel of it's got propaganda vibes. Or it's got
right, and some of it's actually accurate. I mean, like when they said in Colorado, when Colorado legalized, the number of traffic accidents that involves people with involving marijuana increased. I believe that. I mean, for a couple of reasons. One is now it's legal. Less people are going to lie and say, no, 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 I didn't have
exactly,
any cannabis.
exactly,
A lot more are going to say, yeah. And then, of course,
exactly.
you've got that cannabis tourism that we were talking about before. Strangers coming into town for the new cannabis market in that state at the time, and maybe not knowing the street so well and having a little
Right.
fender bender. And there was some cannabis that they had but recently. Yeah. So, uh, but is it
Yeah.
causal? No, I don't believe it's cause and effect. Um, you know.
Yeah, very
But
good.
anyway,
Man, I'm so glad you brought that up because I was trying to dig through a few studies as well about that, especially but because consumption and just kind of like impairment have been very interesting subjects to me lately. And I love what you're saying because there are elements here of common sense that seem to be kind of like forgotten, of like thinking about all of the factors that come into play. Everything you just said about like cannabis tourism is a thing, like, when it comes to people feeling comfortable with even saying that, like, if it's legal now and it's like, yeah, I use cannabis, and it, how many people already how many people already are consuming cannabis and driving or doing this or doing that. Like, these are things that, this is the reason why it's good for us to be in a space where like we are regulating or there's legalization so that we can properly address all of these concerns. Because right now it just feels like everything is a big scare tactic. Like everything is just a big, like, if you do this, this is going to happen. If you do that, this is going to happen. And it's just, there isn't enough of a fair chance of just kind of laying down the list of all of the things that are happening in this one space in this time and place of legalization. Like, there's layers to this thing. It's not just, it's us needing to take the time to really peel back the layers and understand how it helps each of the citizens in terms of like that legalization. Like, how can we better help citizens when it comes to legalization, the whole gambit, like the whole gambit of it. Like, we need to have those kinds of safety precautions in place and all of that, but it's hard to do that when there's just a bunch of scare tactics. and
yes.
and and that's unfair.
Well, we are kind of running toward the end of the hour.
Oh my god, it's 7:55.
Yeah.
Time flies when you're having fun. Okay, cool. Well, then let's wrap it up. And we're going to wrap it up with just talking about some of the events that we have coming up. Thank you. Shout out to everybody, YouTube land, Facebook land. Thank y'all so much. And Twitter land. Thank you so much for tapping in with us. And thanks for just being a part of our cannabis conversations. Looks like Scott's camera might be doing some weird things. I ain't gonna put him out like that. But thank you so much for listening. I appreciate it. My name is VP, and I'm here with South Carolina NORML, working to reform those marijuana laws. you can come through and help us out. We got a couple of things coming up. We've got some events coming up. Let me put the first one up. October 22nd, we've got a SC NORML picnic at Wanamaker Park. Come through and see us, 11 a.m. to 4:20 p.m. Come on out. We need help setting up a little tent, setting up a little variety of things and activities that we'll have out there. But this is just a time for us to come out, be communal, check out what it is that we're doing, and also for us to get to know you all. So we've had a couple of events already, and so we're excited about this one too, so that we can get to know the supporters of legalization and any stories that you may have, any stories or thoughts or questions that you have. We would love to sit down and talk about it, because I think that is going to be beneficial for us. Look at Scott cannot be stopped, y'all. I'm gonna tell you something about Scott. Scott cannot be stopped. Scott is going to make a way out of no way.
I will get back in here no matter what my computer says. I'll have to,
right.
even if I have to use my phone. I am back.
I was just talking about how we've got an event coming up in October, and then the next one here I'm gonna put up here, November 13th, Charleston Pride Festival at Riverfront Park. That's going to be a whole lot of fun. Hope to see y'all out there. Once again, we need volunteers for that element as well. We might have a few shifts and things, but we're going to have some activities out there for the people. We've got some tent action going on. We've got some elements that we could definitely use some help with. We'd love to see you smiling faces. So if you want to help us out, make sure you hit us up.
That is always an active event. We have a lot of people coming by our booth. We are downsizing this year compared to the last year that we were there. Last year that we were there, we had two 10 by 10s. We were sharing some of that with, my phone's falling over here. We were sharing that with some of the Students for Sensible Drug Policy over at College of Charleston. And this year we're downsizing back to 110 by 10. But it's a relatively long day. We'll probably need some volunteers there a little bit early to help us unload the tent and stuff and get it set up and get the booth all prepped. We'll probably have a middle shift there, basically handing out brochures and talking legalization to participants, and a tail end shift to help me tear down and reload the truck up so we can get our butts out of there. But that should be a good event. I can't see it on this little screen here. November 13th. We will be announcing some of this stuff coming up shortly. Same thing for the picnic this next month in October. We're probably going to split that into two shifts. We'll need some volunteers early on to help kind of prep, maybe get some the charcoal cook and things like that. I'm planning on maybe cooking some hot dogs, maybe
a little
burgers.
Food action.
Yeah, a little food action. Again, that's an event we're hoping people will bring a little bit of a, like a covered dish or something like that, something to share. But that should be fun, weather permitting. That is a weather permitting event. I am planning on trying to snag a shelter, but if we can't get one for free, we're probably just going to have to take what we can get.
Right.
So we'll check that out that day or that weekend. And before we go any further, I just want to see, I saw another chat popped up here from Joey. He is right. Outstanding host. You have been doing a great job. We really appreciate you.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Enjoy the VP. You're an outstanding host. I look forward to seeing you take the chapter to new places. Cool. And Scott, you've always been the consummate professional. That's right. That's right. Thank you for continuing to build on this thing you started. Wow. Thanks, Joey, for those kind words. And we're happy to do this. And we're glad that we get to do this because, I think we're pretty passionate about it over here. And we're excited to kind of gear up. And then Josh also said we need a shadow a stoner day. That is hilarious for research purposes.
Stoner day.
Oh my God, hilarious.
That could be interesting. I don't know how exciting it would be in my life. Maybe making a younger, more energetic stoner than me.
Young and spry. And
oh, look, there's Scott napping on the couch. Oh, cool. And look, here he comes back in on another chat window.
Oh my god. It's the like an infinite world. He's like Doctor Strange or something. You the
There
multiverse.
we go. I get rid of that
Multiverse.
one, and hopefully this computer will stay on for the next 2 minutes.
Follow us also on Instagram. It's
Um,
8:01, so we're gonna wrap up here soon.
and
But
now I
follow
just
us on
need to
Instagram
switch my headphones back.
at SC Normal Scott. At SC Normal on Instagram, and you can follow me, VP at Von Postema. Hit us up if you have any questions, or if there's a topic that you would like us to talk about. Hit us up, DM us, all that good jazz. Always taking suggestions. We got some things lined up, but would love to know what you want to talk about. If there's certain candidates you want to hear from or stories that you want to hear, hit us up, and we will try our best to make it happen. But with that being said, we're 1 minute over. Scott, you got anything? Repeat.
No, I think you've covered it all. Like I said, just follow us on social media. Be there for us, support us. We're starting to pull things together for the coming year. We were talking special events, and we did slightly allude to Lobby Day
Yeah.
earlier in our conversation. And that is starting to formulate. We were probably planning our lobby day. We have nothing at this point scheduled for December, but I'm figuring January will be our lobby day. So keep an eye out for that.
All right. Well, thanks so much, everybody. Have a great night. And we out. Peace. SC Normal, y'all.
Good night, all. Bye.